everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Collingwood BigFooty Forum podcast. I am the Mighty T, and joining me tonight, I have our, once living in England, now living amongst us again, our favourite Englishman, Will. How are you today, Will?
Yeah, very good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. We also have regular podcast contributor and soon-to-be goal-kicking game champion of the Collingwood board, Magpie Girl.
Hi, Mighty T. Now, that's not being very fair to my my counterpart, my fellow grand final competitor.
That's right. We all know I try to be as inflammatory as I can on these things. And finally, but certainly not least of all, I'd like to introduce GreatBradScott, who is representing North Melbourne on this week's podcast. Good evening, Brad Scott.
Good evening, guys. Nice to be here. Feeling a little bit outnumbered, but I'll be all right.
We'll be kind.
We welcome everyone aboard the show. We really do appreciate you coming on. It's always good to have a member of the opposition coming on and giving us their first-hand point of view on the game ahead and all the issues in football. And speaking of which, there has been no bigger issue in football over the last 6 months, and especially today, than the Essendon drugs saga, which has reached somewhat of a conclusion with some penalties being handed down to the club. In short, we have found out today that James Hird will be suspended from the club for 12 months, that Danny Corcoran will be suspended for 4 months, with 2 months also held over. The Bombers will be fined $2 million, a lot of draft picks for 2 years, and they'll be banned from this year's final series. Magpie Girl, we've been touching on this for however long we've been doing the podcast. What are your thoughts on today's, the final disciplinary action?
Well, firstly, great relief that it's finally come to a conclusion by the AFL. There still remains the ASADA findings to come down. So sadly for Essendon, they still have that hanging over their heads. There's been a bit of talk. There's two camps. Some people don't think it's enough. Others seem to think it's a fairly fair penalty. My personal opinion is I think it's, for the issues involved, it's a strong penalty, it's a strong message, and I think the AFL's done the best they could do in the circumstances.
It's an interesting point you bring up, because I think perhaps to an extent the AFL were going to be forced into action. GreatBradScott, do you think that they've taken the right action here with their punishments?
I think, considering what may lay ahead, and I've gone back and forth on trying to absorb what's just happened, and I think considering the risk of what may happen to the players, considering ASADA's not done with things, I think the punishments are about right. I think maybe Hird's suspension could be a bit longer, but you can't expect the AFL to get things perfect every time. This has been I think just the way it's been handled. A lot of people criticising ASADA without actually having any valid reason to. I think a lot of it's just been speculation of, they've stated that they've given no advice to Essendon to say that they can use certain drugs. And I think, obviously, there needs to be an overhaul of the AFL system. We need more transparency, and hopefully that's what kicks it off.
You're right there with that word, transparency, and I think that the one thing that confuses the public and disappoints the public is that ASADA, by their own will or, for the integrity of their investigation, have not been able to be transparent. And I think that there is still some confusion in regards to what will happen to the players, or if this is the end. Will, do you see this as the end for the Essendon Football Club in this saga, or is there still more to come? And what do you think of the punishments?
Oh, there's going to be more to come. They still haven't got the individual punishments coming in, which I was reading before. what do I think of the punishments? I think they're pretty fair. However, I probably would have had them maybe play in half the year next year without points, or the full year without points. Considering, if you think about it, I think there could have possibly been a stronger thing just to set the precedent for anyone who decides to do this in the future. Carlton got screwed when they transgressed, I think it was salary cap or whatever it was, about 2 or so wooden spoons. I think, players have gambled before. We just got 14 weeks or whatever. That's pretty strong. They should play out the season, no points next year, no points whatsoever. Not playing finals this year, whatever. That's fine. However, I think next year it should, because they played this year.
Yeah.
Realistically, they should have done this year without points if they got this sort of sooner instead of dragging this whole thing out. Rest of it, I think, is pretty good. I think James Hird should be suspended for longer. I don't think he should be allowed to coach for maybe 2 years or so. Or maybe, I think ASADA should cut all ties with him as well, because he's, the man's poison. Other than that, I think it's all right. I'm just glad it's sort of finally, to a point, come to an end. Obviously, we've still got more to go, but this whole thing has just derailed the entire season, and it's such a shame because it's, you just want to watch football and just enjoy it without this crap sort of ruining it.
It's almost like it's been dragged out for the entire season, and then they've realised that the finals are around the corner. We have to do something, otherwise we could look worse. And the way I see it is, and this might be an overly simplistic point of view, but the AFL have done today all they can I think it's to appease ASADA, to hopefully hold them at bay in terms of their punishments for the clubs and their players, or perhaps even lessen them, because at the end of the day, I don't think the AFL can afford to have one of its marquee clubs without half its team next year.
Well, actually, I disagree with you there. I think they are two totally separate things, and I really don't think ASADA care what the AFL does, because they are two separate issues.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things on the press conference was the response to the question about why did it take so long, and for the AFL, and they were at pains to say how by the time they went through phone records and 13,000 documents and all due process, it just takes time. The other thing that came out of it was that the way they've tightened their practices, their requirements of all the clubs in the competition to the point where they are above what's required of ASADA. And so there are good things to come out of all of this as well. And I think we need to be mindful of that it's been a lesson to every club in the league to do due diligence on all their practices and make sure that their governance is in order. So, as painful as it's been for Essendon, as a competition, everybody's in a better state.
Yeah. I guess you're right. Well, you're certainly right in that respect, Magpie Girl. I guess that from this, there is a message sent, and the AFL is clear on that. And hopefully we don't have our game blighted or overshadowed by an issue like this ever again. And we can talk about this topic all night because we have varying opinions, and let's face it, every news station is running with it, so we had to touch on it. But let's get to the fun stuff. Let's get to the footy, and let's get to the past weekend. And I'm actually going to start off with North Melbourne on this one, because I personally think the biggest story out of the weekend was, in regards to the two sides, North Melbourne and Collingwood, that is North Melbourne potentially squandering an opportunity to, A, knock off the Hawks, who are a damn good football side as it is, and B, to really be in the pole position for that final spot up for grabs now this week. How did you see it, GreatBradScott?
I see it as another instance of North Melbourne being good but just not good enough. I see the game plan evolving to incorporate a little bit of defensive side when it's needed, slowing the game up. There's still, I believe, the bottom 4, 5, 6 players in the best 22 are still being worked out, whether they're too young or moving on, like number 11, Michael Ferrito, probably at the end of the season. He played okay against Lance Franklin, but as you saw, just Hawthorn's A-graders and you guys would have seen it firsthand, the number of last three times they've played you, they can kick ridiculous scores, and their forward line is so dynamic. That's how I saw it. I just see it as a case of, again, North Melbourne this year, just not having enough to get over the line.
You're right there in terms of their power. I refer to them as the machine gun of the AFL because, you don't know. They can hit you from any angle, and they just keep coming at you and keep coming at you. That's their game. But it really looked like you guys had a hold of them for at least a half of footy. If we're looking at that bottom 6 players, who in particular would you be referring to that maybe didn't stand up when the heat was on?
Well, Sam Wright had 3 shots for goal in the second half. He missed, number 19. Again, this is a player who's in and out of the side. Levi Greenwood, and I hate putting him in this category, number 24. He's been okay the last 2 weeks, but this week I felt when, obviously, in the absence of Andrew Swallow, we needed another crunch player, and he didn't deliver. And obviously, we shouldn't be placing that burden upon him. But again, too little, as I mentioned. Ferrito. I think Jamie McMillan, he's another number 34 for North. He's another player he hasn't played enough games, so we're just not sure where he sits in the scheme of things. Sam Gibson, who came on as sub, number 43, another one of those players who can accumulate the ball but has issues using the ball. It's just, this is probably going to be the dilemma of North Melbourne over the next 18 months. It's about working out who's best 22, because I do think that if they play at this level next year with a bit more luck and maybe a bit better draw, they're definitely a top 8 side. And I'm maybe biased, but it's hard to not see some of their efforts against top sides and say that that's not the case.
Sentimentality in football, and Alan Didak is currently, the focal point at Collingwood. He is a veteran of the club, a champion of the club, and has been an all-round great player of the game. And he's only played the 3 games for the year and still isn't guaranteed his spot in our best 22 come finals. Now, Will, what's your opinion when it comes to this? I mean, should we still be turning to these veterans, or should we be focusing on the youth that has gotten us this far?
I think experience is always good in finals. However, I think if he's playing well in the VFL, play him. That's all I think. That's all my opinion is. If he's got form, play him. I mean, if he's obviously playing poorly, but Buckley wants to bring him in for experience, just what's the point in that? But if he's actually playing really well, then just play him. I mean, his experience is going to be vital to the younger fellas anyway. But if he's got good form in VFL, it will translate into the AFL generally. And Didak has got some silky skills that we desperately need.
I have to say, watching him the other night, though, I think he was suddenly very aware that the MCG is a much bigger ground than Vic Park. And honestly, I don't know if he could play out a full game on the MCG.
Yeah, it's an interesting call. Look, I must say, when I was watching on telly, and I saw him. And the thing is, I think this also contributes to that. I think he had a point to prove on Friday night, and he attacked every contest as fast and as hard as he could. He tried to get to every ball, and if he's playing a full game, Dids won't have that role. He won't need to do that. I think he was trying to make a statement. And look, I do agree to a large extent with you, Will. Form is king here, but we come back to the form discussion and we talk about the other veteran on our list who may not get another game this year, which is Darren Jolly. And, experience is important come finals. Darren Jolly's playing well in the VFL, but he's got this 19-year-old kid who's standing in his way. What's our move come this week and come first week of finals?
Probably bring Jolly in. I mean, as a lot of people are saying on the board, and as a lot of people can see when he plays, he can't run out a full game because he hasn't had a pre-season yet. I think bring in Jolly and sort of just rotate the two. Just if Jolly's in the right, put Grundy forward, and vice versa.
So would you be taking Lynch out for him in that instance?
More than likely, because Lynch, I think every time I've watched Lynch play recently, he's got a tendency to fumble a lot. He played okay on the weekend without being outstanding. I mean,
yeah, great start.
Just my problem is his marking. I think it's deteriorated. His kicking is deteriorated a bit. I'd rather have Jolly and Grundy in rather than Lynch.
It's certainly a very interesting goal, very interesting theory, and I guess it all comes down to whether those other two guys can play that role up forward that we're asking Lynch to play. GreatBradScott, you have a similar predicament, except your ageing superstar his spot is never in contention because he's just that good. What's it like watching Brett Harvey, and how long can you see him sticking around for?
It's a good question. We keep asking ourselves this at the end of every season, to be honest. We've seen no slowing down. He still finds a lot of the ball, still uses it well, and I can see him for another 2 years, to be honest. I think he wants, and he's obviously signed on to also have a little bit of a side coaching role, and especially with some of those young midfielders, I think he does need to hang around, not necessarily because of the best 22, because he is, but I think there'll be a time in the next year and a half, 18 months, where he will fall out of the best 22.
Yep.
Obviously, there's natural, you slow down, but I definitely think that his ability to win the ball can be something that can be, taught to some of the younger midfielders, because our list has a lot of young midfielders.
Do you think that in Andrew Swallow's absence, you'll see Brent Harvey step up perhaps to, obviously maybe not take the role of captain per se, but do you think that he'll step up and carry the burden, or are you expecting guys like Jack Siebel to come up and carry a bit more weight there?
I think with Brent had the captaincy for a bit, and I felt as if it wasn't really his thing. He's definitely a leadership role person, but he's not the captain per se. Petrie, Wells and Ziebel, I feel as if are the three that will stand up, and as you've seen in games this season, when it is on the balance and a player needs to stand up, those three, Wells and Petrie, who are senior players, but Ziebel has been the consistent one of the younger brigade to stand up, and he's definitely someone who I think should be captain. I think it hasn't stopped Trent Cotchin from Richmond doing a fantastic job. He speaks fantastically. He leads the club. He continues to go in when his team requires him to, and I think Jack does the same for us.
This might be a bit of sacrilege to our Collingwood supporters, but Jack does remind me a little bit of Nathan Buckley, just in the way he goes about his football. And yeah, I do enjoy watching him play. But honestly, I've got to say, come this weekend, I hope he doesn't get a sniff of it. Which brings us to the big game. Odd situation for the AFL and their fixturing. These two teams could be playing finals, and they're playing on the last day. We won't talk about that. We won't mention that. But it is a big game, more so for the North Melbourne Football Club. And if we look back to round one, which feels like forever ago now, I never felt that Collingwood was in danger of losing this game, but the scoreboard suggests different. GreatBradScott, what did you think of round one, and has the team improved since then?
I'll be honest and say I don't think so. I think Collingwood outplayed us that day. I think you used our biggest weakness and you exploited it fantastically, and that's our midfield not getting into defensive positions. You've got players such as Swan, Marley Williams, they move to the flat side of the ground and they find space. And obviously when the ball gets turned over with an ineffective move forward with our ball use, when it gets turned over, we can be cut to shreds, and I think you guys are fantastic at running the ball out. I think the score reflected where the two teams were at the time. I don't think North have necessarily moved up and down all season. They've just sort of haven't gotten the reward for the sort of form that they've been in at times. Yeah.
I mean, look, and the other big issue is your best player by a country mile on that day was Andrew Swallow, 34 touches, 9 tackles, played probably his game of the year opening round. We know that these other guys that you mentioned, Wells and Petrie, will fill the void. Z will obviously in the midfield. Can you see any changes being made between? Let's look closer to between last week and now in the team that will help you guys get over the line.
Definitely Nathan Grimer will come back into the side. I'm not sure about Scott Thompson, our probably closest candidate to All-Australian, probably is our best defender. Not sure if he'll come back into the side. I think he may get the season off, or if somehow we fall ass backwards into finals, he'll get a spot. I'm not sure. I think it's just, again, those sort of fringe players like Greenwood, Sirakowski, Jamie McMillan, they might be substituted for maybe Taylor Garner might be brought into the side. Ben Jacobs has been okay. It's sort of just those players that need to support, obviously in the absence of Swallow, it's definitely the midfield, and then it's Zeeble, Cunnington, and whoever else can stand up, because we've got definitely missing our captain.
Yeah, it's mix and match, still trying to find that balance for North, and maybe that's where they'll come unstuck. On to the Magpies. Magpie Girl, we really enjoyed the West Coast game. This is a bit of a dead rubber for us, as in we probably can't change our position too much. What are your expectations from the game?
Well, I think we should go out to win it, and win it as good as we possibly can, if that makes good English. I don't. There's been a lot of talk about should we rest players, should we ease back, because because we're the last game, maybe we can. If we've got something to play for, we can try and get into 5th position, or who do we want to be playing in the finals? I mean, all the manipulation that's been proposed. My feeling is that we should just continue to capitalise on the improvement that we've been experiencing each week and keep building on that, and that we should really just go out and play with the best team that we can, and aim to win by in the best way that we can.
Well, it seems like win, lose or draw, we're going to be playing Port Adelaide. It'll probably be on the Saturday, if not the Sunday of finals, actually. How should we approach this game? What should we be looking to achieve from it? What do you want to see from it?
I want to see us win by like 100 points. I think we should go in good form is winning form. I think we should approach it to win it. I don't buy into this stuff, trying to rest players. You might as well just try and get everybody on the park playing well. It translates into the next game. You don't really see them like Swanee having like a 40 possession game and then playing poorly the next week. You might as well just sort of try and get everyone playing well. I said before, I'm not looking forward to this game because North, they're a very good side. I said before, they're a top 4 side. I mean, they've played Hawthorn better than we did when we versed them. We beat Geelong. They nearly beat Geelong. I mean, their form against the top teams is amazing. And I think next year they'll be top 4. So I think it'll be a close game. I think the Magpies will win it. And I hope they win it. But, yeah, we should approach it with a winning attitude to sort of translate into the finals.
It's certainly high praise. But we were talking about perhaps even not resting players, but we had, obviously, Dane Beams is a late withdrawal. Luke Ball has an injury cloud, slightly over him being subbed out. Would it be worth risking those players in this game?
I think have Ball, bring back Ball,
yep.
Have Beams, because Beams is younger, so his body's going to be able to recover better. Have Ball maybe on the substitutes, start Didak.
Yeah.
Get him, and then if Didak doesn't play well, just sub him out. But I'd like to see Didak play well, like sort of start him in the game and see how it goes. But yeah, definitely bring back Ball, definitely.
GreatBradScott, for you, the equation is quite simple. Win, and you're in with a chance. Lose, and you're out. In your opinion, do North deserve to play finals this year, even if they only win the 10 games?
I've thought about this, and I've been asked the question, and obviously a lot of people have posed the question, who among the sides currently sitting outside the 8 who are going to potentially take Essendon's spot deserves to. I think at our best, absolutely. I think we've beaten more sides in the top 8 than the Swans have. We've beaten 4 and the Swans have beaten 3. It's a strange statistic. I think we do at our best, definitely. Again, at our worst, no, we don't, because we've dropped some absolutely absurd games that we shouldn't have. But overall, yeah, I think we do. But again, it'll depend if we can beat Collingwood, and it will take another convincing effort. And I think a win should see that we do deserve our spot.
Well, I'd like to wish you all the best of luck, but it wouldn't be too sincere. But it does prove to be a big game for both sides on the week, and from a Collingwood point of view, how we approach it, how we approach the finals, and from a North Melbourne point of view, the chance for a little bit of redemption to make up for all those close losses. There's a chance to take a big scalp this year and to play some finals football. So, it's a nervous game for me, but I'm looking forward to it.
Can I? How many games have you played at the MCG this year?
North Melbourne, none.
Really, none?
No, off the top of my head. No, actually one. One against the Hawks. Apologies, one. Hawthorn, and we lost by 5 points.
I mean, don't you think that's a little bit? Look, we know that the way that the draw is structured, and we know the way the fixture works. It's never going to be fair and equal to everyone. But doesn't that feel like a disadvantage to North Melbourne, especially when it comes to finals and playing teams like Collingwood there?
I think definitely 2 years ago that was a problem because the side was so adapt to playing at Etihad in it. We played you guys 2 years ago and we lost heavily, incredible margin. And I think we've played... yeah, I wish I could say the same. Drenched. I think we've played games in the meantime there, and it's held up, and we've certainly been able to travel this season and be competitive. I would like to play more at the MCG. I do prefer going and seeing games there, but I think overall, not really. You've just got to play where they say you play, and if you bring it on the day, anything happens.
Well, it's going to be, as I said before, an interesting Sunday afternoon of football, so I'm thoroughly looking forward to it. All right, let's move on to our last segment, our quick questions, and I'm going to start with you, Will. Do you believe we need an interchange cap?
No.
No. Very simple, very short. That's fair enough. I like it. What about yourself, GreatBradScott?
Oh, sorry, what was the question?
Do you believe that we need an interchange cap?
Interchange cap? Not really, but if we are going to bring one in, make it reasonable, 140 interchanges.
Yeah, well, that's not bad. We're only at 130 on now, so I think that's fair. I don't think we need one either particularly. Magpie Girl, should teams be resting players when coming into the finals?
Generally speaking, no. I think if there's any player that's got a slight niggle and the results of the game aren't going to make a difference, then yes.
GreatBradScott, do you think that teams should be resting players when we go into finals?
It depends. Flirting with form can be a little dangerous. It depends if you can fill the role. Because you don't want to drop a game, and you obviously need a reasonable amount, proper player on the park. If there's immediate injury concerns, then yes, definitely. But aside from that, I think you should shy away from it.
Good answer. Will, do you think that Nathan Brown should be considered for All-Australian fullback?
From Collingwood?
Absolutely.
Yes. Oh, actually, it's a bit of a tough one. He's played some poor games. He's played some really good games. Probably not, because I think there's been better fullbacks in the league. He's very good. He'd be very close, but no, maybe not.
Well, one of the many stacking up against is North Melbourne's Scott Thompson. GreatBradScott, what are your thoughts? Do you think that Scott Thompson will get the All-Australian nod? And have you seen a bit of Nathan Brown?
First question, I think he will. I think he's definitely been a cornerstone of North's backline for the last 3 years, and definitely this season he's taken not only some big roles, but he's launched a lot of our offensive plays. Nathan Brown, from what I've seen, he's obviously came back from that time off.
Yep.
He's been fantastic one-on-one. I think that's his strength, and obviously also playing that. He's not a key position, but he's big enough and solid enough to take any sort of opponent, and I think he's definitely been one of your better players this season. I think he could make the extended squad. If he makes the All-Australian team, I'm not sure.
Magpie Girl, would you consider offering Ben Reid for the number 1 draft pick?
I don't see the logic in that. I think he's such an integral part of our side that I just don't understand why you would pull apart our team as it is now for the number 1 pick.
Completely agree. What are your thoughts, Will?
Absolutely not. Ben Reid is so integral to our team. It's not funny. Like, we get rid of him, we're doomed. Not doomed, but yeah.
Just a quick pointing out to anyone listening, that's 100% completely behind not trading him. So whatever idea we have, scrap it. He's not going anywhere. GreatBradScott, you've got the second coming of Jesus himself coming at the end of this year in Luke McDonald. Is it important for club culture for teams to pick players who are under the father-son rules?
I think it is. I think there's a sort of tradition to it. We don't have many great traditions left in football. I think, as you can see with Essendon, with Danaher coming along, there's something like passing the torch along. I think when you look at clubs that haven't had a father-son pick, like St Kilda, they haven't had one ever in their history. And I was looking into this before. It's strange, and I feel as if they're definitely missing out on a piece of tradition and something a club, can use,
Yeah, it is a special thing. What do you think, Will? Do you think it's important to pick up sons under the father-son rule?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like GreatBradScott said, it's one of the few traditions we've got left, and it's fantastic. I mean, it's good that they sort of do what their father did and play for the club that they probably supported as a kid and that their dad played for. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I think it certainly has a nice feeling to it, and hopefully the club looks at young Jake Kelly and then Darcy Moore next year, sons of absolute guns for the club. All right, I believe that brings us to the end of our program. I'd like to, send a very special thank you to you, GreatBradScott. You've been a great member to have on, and always great, as I said before, to have opposition members come on and say their bit. So thank you for coming along.
Thank you guys for letting me on. I really enjoyed it.
We've certainly enjoyed having you, Will. It's nice to have you closer to home. It makes the link a little bit easier, and I guess it makes your ability to watch a bit of football a bit easier too. So thank you for coming aboard again.
Yeah, no worries, mate. No worries.
And Magpie Girl, it is always a pleasure talking to you and having you aboard.
Thanks, Marty T.
This is the Mighty T signing out for another week.
Hello, this is Dave 7 for round 23, and I'm going to do it on how far can our VFL team go in the finals, which we know we've gotten there last week after beating Rugby in a very close game. Though we were 7 goals up at three-quarter time, but we only won by about 10 points. So, we nearly blew it, but we didn't. So we were in front when the siren went, so we finished 6th, and that's all that matters. So our first game will be against Port Melbourne in the eliminator final, which I don't really like though, but I guess you have no choice as to how the ABC sets it up to televise the game, so I guess we have to live to playing Port, even if we finish 6th and they finish 7th. But we've beaten Port in the last 2 games at Vic Park, mostly because of bad goal kicking by Port, but still we won. So it'll be a really interesting game to start up, and I really do think we can beat Port Melbourne, because we have the firepower of Jolly and Witts in the ruck. We can hope Payne has a good game. Our backline's pretty good, but my big worry is after we win this weekend against Port, we play the top teams, is that our top-up players are not quite good enough as the top teams' top-up players, which does hurt our bit. We have some good players on the AFL list, but some of the players on the top-up list are not that crash hot. I can't really name them. There's a couple of good ones, like in Bowl, good. That's probably the best one. And in Hellier, but we'll see what happens. But could we win a premiership? We'll be pushing it, but I'm tipping us to finish get to the semis or at the prelims. Let's hope we can get as far as we can, as it helps the AFL team to stay in the cup at the same time. So I found something interesting. We finished 6th in the VFL, and we're going to finish 6th in the AFL. It's quite interesting. So I'll be back for next week's podcast. Bye.